this multi-location meeting of the first ever Community Finance and Strategic Leadership Committee on the 18th of July 2024. I am Councillor Phil Rogers and I will be chairing this meeting. Please could you ensure that your phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. In addition, when asked to raise your hand, if members who are virtually viewing this meeting could raise your electronic hand, and for the members of the Council in the chamber, just raise your hands. On to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, please? I can't see any, so we'll move on to part 1 of the meeting. Agenda item 3 is to consider the items selected from the Cabinet Forward Work Programme. We will now move to consider the reports as selected by this committee for consideration. Agenda item 3A, the Corporate Plan for 2024 to 2027. Working towards a more prosperous, fairer and greener Neath Talbot. Pages 5 to 89 of the report. Could the leader or officers, would you like to add anything additional to the report?
Thank you, Chair. I think we had a seminar this morning on the corporate plan, and the corporate plan is there for all members to look at, and I hope they have, and ready for any questions that they may have on the corporate plan, but I think it's self-explanatory. Either myself, Noelwyn, or officers will be able to assist in any questions. Thank you, Diolch.
Many thanks, Leader. We'll now move on to members' questions. Early indications are initially from, first up, Councillor Patterson, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to make the same comments basically as I made in the seminar earlier on. I do feel that when we produce the corporate plan, it may be confusing to the public, as confusing as in maybe they see it as some sort of manifesto of the council, that these are the things that we're going to do, and it might not end up that we are doing those, but those are the aspirations. So I did ask if we could possibly do something to address the fact that to try and mitigate people's what's the word? Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Expectations of what is possible, and also highlight the areas that the council has got no sort of input on. The Public Service Board, I get people who can't catch a bus to get to the doctors, can't get a doctor's appointment. Well, yes, we have links with our stakeholders, but we don't actually have an input on that. And the worst, for my personal thing, is Titarian. We are not, we have links in to make inquiries, but we don't really have any input in what they say, their policies and that sort of thing. Also, on the planning side of things, I did say in the seminar, I'm probably repeating the same things, but this is a separate meeting, that we are very good economically at looking and getting job opportunities within the county borough, so much so that I think we're in danger of outswaying our ability to house the people that may come for the jobs. So we need to sort of, I'm going to be having meetings with Kerry soon. I know he's on holiday at the moment, but when he comes back, I'm going to ask what is really happening regarding housing. There are several issues, and many places have got things that don't comply. So members of the public might think, well, we've got that big, huge field up there, we've got that place over there, not knowing really that because of all the planning law, some of them are not acceptable. So I think communication is the key with the corporate plan. So if we could let the people know what is under the council's jurisdiction and what isn't, and that would help things enormously, I think, going forward. But I think the plan's aspirations, there's nothing wrong with them at all. This is what we would like to do. Whether or not we're going to be able to do it is another thing. Thank you.
Many thanks, Councillor Patterson. Yes, I think we'll pass over to the leader initially, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And if any officers want to come in to put a bit of more clarity. But as Suzanne said this morning in the seminar, I certainly concur with a lot of the points she raised. We do need a corporate plan that's friendly so communities, residents understand absolutely correct what we are responsible for. I think that is where we are trying to go. I mean, it will take time. Officers work in a particular way to deliver what I see as an excellent corporate plan that's going to be in front of us next week in Council. It's important to be scrutinised. You raise a lot of good points, but we also must remember that a lot of what the corporate plan entails, there's work outside that's going on with officers that feeds into it. It's a live corporate plan, and things that happen will impact on the corporate plan. But you are correct, Suzanne. I certainly concur with you that we need to have a friendly document that residents understand exactly what it is, the aspirations, and what has been delivered sometimes, because I think that plan does show what are already been delivered. But do we actually get it out to our communities? I think you mentioned this morning, do they read our corporate plan? I think we can continue to give the documents. It's take a horse to water, can't make it drink it, I suppose. But we as one council, I believe, I think it's our plan, as I said this morning. We need to deliver it, and hopefully you'll support the plan, and then we'll go together on it. Planning, again, with your planning hat on, I mean, you're probably more experienced than a lot of us here as a previous chair of planning. I'm sure you will know a lot more into how the complications of planning. This is something I would envisage that the likes of ourselves in Cabinet, me as leader and Alan as deputy leader, is pressures on Welsh Government, because we're already having those conversations, how to make the planning process and the policies that they implement on us as an authority a lot easier. So development and what we need in housing and other aspects are able to be delivered more quickly, to recognise homelessness and other pressures that we have. So planning, you, as I said, you probably know a little bit more about me on the planning side of things, but I think it's a good corporate plan. I hope that all members will endorse it, and please feel free to continue to feed into the corporate plan. So I don't know if Noelwyn wants to cover any other points that you raised that I might have missed.
Many thanks, Steve. Yeah, we'll bring Noelwyn in on this one, please.
Yeah, diolch, Cadeirydd, and thank you for your comments, Councillor Patterson. I think just to expand maybe on some of the conversation we had this morning, clearly the corporate plan is a statutory document, and we do have to cover off a number of areas within that statutory document as a corporate plan. However, consideration we can give as officers is whether we look at producing a more public-facing document, kind of not a plan on a page, but maybe half a dozen pages or so, something that would be more user-friendly, plain English, so that we can use that to maybe better communicate some of the key aspirations and what we are actually delivering as a local authority moving forward. You mentioned in terms of managing expectations, clearly the revised corporate plan has been pulled together looking through the lens of the significant financial challenges that we are facing, have faced for a number of years and continue to face, and the outlook isn't looking great for the next couple of years either. So hence why you've got the transformation programme in there now, which is really a key set of priorities, of a number of which have been through by yourselves as elected members in the past. If you look at homelessness and social care, for example. So a real focus on ensuring that we deliver those key investment projects that will make a difference ultimately, not just the finances of the local authority, but also to the residents of Neath Talbot Council. Diolch.
Many thanks, Donnan. If I could just add there, obviously we have a new government in Westminster, and they have indicated changes of planning for England, so hopefully there will be knock-on effect, I would hope, to Welsh Government as well. If you'd like to come back in, Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, it's on that very point. I'm not criticising the planning rules, because they are an ideal set of rules that if we adhered to them, we would be producing the right homes in the right places, the right businesses in the right places. So I'm not criticising the Welsh Government planning laws. what I'm trying to emphasise is the fact that Neath Port Talbot's topography is not suitable in all cases for developments to go ahead. If we stick to those, which we should really, because of future generations and our residents' health and well-being, we should stick to those rules. So I know that I've already had a quick word with Kerry and Nicola, who used to be the head of planning, but they're going to be working more on a regional basis and maybe approaching councils at our borders to see if we can jointly go ahead with areas which we ourselves do not possess. Thanks.
Many thanks, Councillor Patterson. Are there any other questions on the corporate plan, please? I can't see any indications. I have one small question on something quite small within the plan, okay? And it's on page 66 of the plan. It's about the event strategy. And it's a personal one, really. This is on page 66, okay? I would hope the strategy would try to streamline the regulations and the paperwork required to run events. We'd like to run events for community-based focus, and we're currently trying to run a local one myself with a secretary who works full-time, and the amount of the requirements and paperwork we'd have in return is putting people off actually doing it. I'm in danger of losing my secretary at the moment because of the amount of requests for different types of paperwork, different insurances for this, that, and the other. And I would like that if we are keen to promote events on a community level, can I make a request that we try to look at simplifying the process for people, because it's really, really difficult to run it. Nolwenn, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. So on the matter in terms of our events, Chris Saunders clearly is putting a key piece of work in place, and a policy will become in before members before too long. It's accepted that we do need to streamline and make the ability for local organisers to put their events on far more streamlined and far simpler. Myself and Councillor Gosworth the other day met with the organisers of the Richard Burton 10K, for example, and we're going to be using them as a bit of a pilot to see if we can simplify the process. And for them to go through now, Chris Saunders' events team, he's recently employed a member of staff there who's going to be acting at that focal point, so that any community race organiser can simply go to that person as a single point of contact, rather than having to guess which officers they need to be speaking to across the authority. I think that will simplify the process. At the end of the day, we want to demonstrate to the communities and to organisers that we are open for these events to take place. They provide a significant economic benefit to our local communities and to our authorities. So we want to be encouraging that. We want to be providing as much assistance as we can, and not looking as if we're trying to block these events from taking place. So that's the aim of Chris Saunders' policy and the team he's putting in place. I'm confident that that will bear fruit, and we'll hopefully see a lot of community events taking place. Chair, diolch.
Diolch. Thank you, Nolwenn. That's exactly what we're after, really. We are finding it particularly difficult to run our fate this year. Okay. Lovely. We have Councillor Dacey, please.
Thank you, Phil. On page 120, it says, we work with schools to reduce barriers and learning to provide equitable and inclusive education offered to pupils, particularly those from low-income families. The Sandfields Primary School, which is in my ward, is an outlier with regards to all the social deprivation indexes. For example, 70% of the pupils are entitled to school dinners, 30% of people...
Sorry to stop you there, Councillor Dacey, but that one is not on this report.
Oh, sorry, right. I thought it was no. Sorry, apologies for jumping in. Apologies.
Yeah, it comes in on the equality. Okay, so I'll come back to you when we get to equality, okay? Thank you. Are there any other items on the corporate plan, please? Councillor Patterson.
I do apologise for coming back again, Chair. It says a best start in life about reducing exclusions. Now, I can't see anyone. Is there? No, it's not. So I just want to raise the issue now then, that it is very difficult to complete that. bearing in mind that a lot of schools are now in possibly having deficit budgets and laying off TAs. I don't know, because I'm not on education, I don't know what the situation is, but I do hear people complaining who are governors that it is a bad situation at the moment. So if we can do that, that would be brilliant. It's one of these things that is an aspiration, I believe. So I just want to raise that.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. We'll try to ensure that Andrew Thomas gives a response to your request. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the corporate plan, please? Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll move on to Part B, which is... Oh, sorry, I may as well do the recommendation while we're at it. Yeah. The recommendation is listed on page 6 of the agenda pack. I'm happy to propose it. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henton. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain?
I can see no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this recommendation is supported.
I can see no indications to the contrary, Chair. The recommendation is supported.
Thank you, Alison. We got it. We got the recommendation through. Thank you. On to agenda item 3B, which is the Strategic Equality Plan. That's for 2024 to 2028. It's listed on pages 91 to 165 of the report. Councillor Noyle or Noylwen, would you like to add anything additional to the report?
Thank you, Chair. I don't have anything to add to this. I don't know if Noylwen wants to add.
I have nothing to add, Chair, but I think Neath will give a few words to introduce the item. That's okay.
Thank you, Chair. So we were due to publish a revised strategic equality plan this year, as our 2020 to 2024 plan was coming to an end, and we are required to publish this plan under Section 3 of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015. The equalities objectives within the revised plan haven't changed from the previous one, as it's felt these were still relevant and are still relevant to the communities of Neath Talbot. So there was no requirement to consult on the plan on this occasion. But where we hope you'll see a marked difference from our previous strategic equality plans is in the action plan section. So in addition to updating the actions themselves, we've tried to make the action plan more smart. So it now includes outcomes and measures against each action. These will assist us in measuring progress when we come to gathering information to present the SEP annual reports to members going forward. And it's important to say really that in revising this plan has been a true corporate effort with input from across the council. So thank you.
Many thanks. We'll now move to members' questions. And first up, I have Councillor Patterson, please.
I just wanted to know if because Sheena, as I've asked this question of Sheena many times, if we are anonymising applications for employment with the county in all cases, or are there some exceptions? Thank you.
If I'd like to bring in Councillor Noyle, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I know the answer, but I think Sheena's going to give it to you more distinctly than I will. Sheena's joined us online, so I think Sheena will be able to answer that if that's okay. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, so the answer to Councillor Patterson's question is that we now have the capability up and running to anonymise application forms. So via our iTrent system, we can completely anonymise the application process. At the moment, it is an option for recruiting managers to select. So we haven't made it mandatory yet. In order to do that, we need to change our recruitment and selection policy. What we're planning to do before we do that is to do a lot of awareness raising with our recruiting managers. And we're planning to do that in a range of different ways. There is one specific appointment where we have taken the decision not to anonymise the application form. So that's in relation to the Chief Exec appointment, which is currently going through the process. So in the report that I took to Council on the 20th of March, that included specific advice for Council in relation to anonymising the application forms for that post, that because of the nature and the seniority of that post, in order to anonymise the application form, we'd have to strip so much information it would make the task of shortlisting for the post really difficult. So we took the decision in that instance not to anonymise. And I think there still will be some instances moving forward where it wouldn't be appropriate to anonymise application forms. But in general, once we change our recruitment and selection policy, we are going to be requiring line managers to use the anonymised application process unless there's a good reason not to.
Many thanks. Councillor Patterson.
Yep, thank you. Thank you very much, Sheena. Is it possible at least just to take out gender? I mean, I understand that what's in an application can identify somebody because they give information in that, but just it doesn't really matter what the gender is, does it?
Sheena?
The gender is absolutely not relevant to a post, and unless we've decided to use a very specific piece of employment legislation that enables you on occasion to go out and recruit a specific gender. So for example, for jobs linked to personal care, but we basically hardly ever use that kind of job advert. So requiring an applicant to identify the gender isn't necessary at all, but most of the time you can tell from somebody's name. So I would suggest that if we're going to anonymise, we anonymise thoroughly and remove any information that could identify somebody, their gender, their race, etc., etc. Otherwise, just removing the question around gender probably isn't going to remove that information. But when we develop the recruitment and selection policy, that will be coming before elected members. So you'll be able to see what it is we are proposing and the detail of it.
Thank you, Sheena. Councillor Patterson, would you like to come back in?
Just ask when that may be coming towards before members.
Okay, Sheena?
Ballpark.
It's going to be towards the end of this year. So it'll
Right.
be Personnel Committee before Christmas.
Thank you, Chair.
Many thanks. Thank you, Sheena. Next up on my list is Councillor Andrew Neath. Start to come back in, Andrew. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'll have to leave the camera off because my internet's gone down. I'm on the phone a minute, so I missed a bit of the meeting. Can you hear me all right, yeah?
Yeah, fine, Andrew. Carry on.
Right. On page 120, it says about equitable and inclusive education offered to pupils, particularly those from low-income families. Sandfleet Primary School is an outlier in terms of all the social deprivation indexes. There isn't another school that comes near some of the indexes. The 70% are entitled to free school dinners, 30% who are English is not their first language. There's a strong diversity in the school, obviously. So my worry is obviously the funding there, especially with TAs and who've got looked after children that need special cares in there, and it needs more funding. I have spoke to Neath since the last meeting this morning, and she's put me on to a Paul Indel and things. But will there be more funding for if you're going to make it equitable for every pupil in the borough? Then obviously the schools that are outliers, such as Sandfleet Primary, need more money and more assistance to get up to standard.
Thank you, Councillor Dacey. I'll bring in Councillor Simon Noyle on this, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure whether I'll be able to answer any of that, Andrew, in all honesty. And I'll probably have to defer you to officers. Clearly, there is an issue there, as you've outlined. But that will need to be discussed further with officers. You mentioned Paul Hinder in terms of funding. We must also be aware that funding isn't available for statutory services within our schools. So I don't think there'll be any assistance from Paul and his department for you on that. But maybe we can come back to you once we've spoken with Nia and some of our education officers at a later date. Would that be okay, Andrew?
Yeah, as long as it's not pushed aside, I will be chasing it up, to be honest, because I spoke to the headmaster and I was quite shocked by how far outlying compared to other schools we are. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Your question has been duly noted, and we'll wait the response. Is that okay? Thank you, Councillor Noyle. Next indication I have is from Councillor Rob Jones, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question concerns digital inclusion within the plan as listed in page 109 of the report. What is concerning me here is that there's very little detail in relation to the digital inclusion side of things in specific areas of age discrimination and mental capacity for learning and accessing the internet. As we are moving to personal accounts with people within the community, I note that there is a mapping exercise has been done as listed on page 136 of the report. And it says the report has been concluded. I was wondering what that report contains, how we are going to include those that are currently digitally excluded, to ensure that they have the same provision and facilities and not discriminated against. I'll give you two examples. 88-year-old woman has internet but doesn't know how to work a computer. A 62-year-old woman living on her own has mental health learning disabilities and has got no internet at all. These are excluded from our services under equalities. And yet when we publish anything, it's always published online. So how are we going to include these people and what provisions going to be made? And I would like to see the concluded report in relation to the mapping exercise of those that have been digitally excluded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I'll bring in Councillor Simon Hoyle, please.
Thanks, Chair. What I would say in relation to that, Councillor Jones, is your question is quite specific there. And without having prior knowledge of it, I can't answer you without having Chris Owens here with us. So I'm going to have to come back to you. But can I make a plea to all members of what I would call the Scrutiny Committee, the committee here today? If you do have detailed questions which will rely on detailed answers, which are now going to come to us as Cabinet members to answer, can we please have them in advance? Otherwise, the level of information that we'll be able to provide to you, unless there are officers in the room, I've got our two accountants here today with us in terms of the finance questions that might come up, but other questions, the detail of the answer you require will be what they will be able to provide for you rather than what I will. There's the digital data and technology strategy that I've gone through with Chris, and the work going on behind that. Whilst I've had an update from Chris, the detail of it I'm not familiar with. So if that's okay, we can come back to you on that one, Councillor Jones. But going forward, can I make a plea that we can have those questions at the pre-brief so that we can obtain the information, that we'll be able to answer them fully? If that's okay, please.
Councillor Jones?
Well, I understand what you're saying, Councillor Noyle. The report is there. It talks about digital inclusion. I would have thought that there would have been at least one officer that may have been able to speak in relation to that. And it's not always possible due to personal commitments or work commitments to provide the questions beforehand. But I understand where you are coming from. My only response is, if you're going to make a reply to the questions that I've asked, can you please make sure that every member of the committee that is on this call also gets a copy? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I'll bring Noyle in. Oh, sorry, if you'd like to come back, Councillor Noyle.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I completely agree with you. What I would like to say finally is that this is the first of these kind of meetings. So we are learning as we go along a little bit. And I think we're going to have that as in this very first meeting. Going forward, I agree with you that the relevant officer should be in the meeting. They can join from Teams now, so there should be no excuses, really. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Noyle. I'd bring Noyle in at this moment, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can't answer your question in full, Councillor Jones. What I am aware is that there is SPF funding available and there are officers in place within the social care team who go out and provide support for those digitally excluded within our communities. Clearly, Chris's work is also focused within our kind of staffing contingent. But what we do is, as Councillor Noyle said, we'll find out further information from our colleagues in social care as well with regards to how that SPF funding is being used in the community to address social, digital exclusion. Diolch.
Thank you, Noyle. And Councillor Jones, again, we'll get back with an answer on this. Is that okay? Thank you.
Yeah, can I just come back? Can I just come back?
Yeah,
on what,
certainly, Councillor Jones.
Noyle said. Yeah. Yeah, this is why I said that the report has been done, but we haven't got a copy of this report, and it's so important for the digital inclusion. And we are literally talking about canvassing anyone and everyone in our community that's been identified. Now, there is a big gap here between what perhaps our social services have got, what we've got online. So we need to know who and how these people are being mapped. And that's why it's important we get a copy of this report as soon as. Thank you. I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Duly noted. Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Sean Percy, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd, thank you. My question's a bit more general, just in relation to the report. There's obviously the action plan at the back, which is quite comprehensive in terms of what is setting out, which is very helpful. But one of the things that's perhaps not clear is who's owning those actions and what other plans the further actions within them are contained within, because there's quite a lot in there, which I'm sure it will be contained within other documents and plans that become into other scrutiny committees. But at a glance, it's quite hard to pull those out, and some of the actions are quite vague. And I'm sure there's a more detailed, plan behind them. So I don't know if anybody can perhaps maybe expand a little on it, but it might be useful in future iterations if there is going to be an action plan that is clear if the action is taken from another strategy or document that's referred to, and it's clear who, which department, which officer, which cabinet member is responsible for those areas, just so we can track that progress, because as it stands, it's a little bit difficult to track an action and work out who is going to be following up on that action. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. We'll hand over to Anita at this point, please.
Thanks, Councillor Percy. Yeah, that's a really good point, and we can certainly take that on board. We do have a record of which officers supplied each action, so we'll go back and go through. We can put maybe posts against rather than names, because those will change over the 4 years, and the service areas and the relevant cabinets. So yeah, that's something we can certainly pick up before we go back to council in September.
Lovely. Thanks, Anita. That's great. Are you happy with that, Councillor Percy?
Yeah, that's good. The only thing I'd add is if it's contained within another plan or document, if that could be referred to as well, it would be very helpful. Because I'm assuming a lot of these have been taken from other documents and plans and strategies that have been produced corporately. So that would be perfect then, actually, as a at a glance document.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Percy. No one's indicating that it'll be put in a document, okay, so it'll be easy to track. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next up, I have Councillor Alan Llewellyn, please.
Yeah, diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Thanks very much indeed, Chair. Just responding to a couple of points that have been raised. I mean, I think it's a very good point by Councillor Rob Jones about that we need to be aware of digital exclusion. We're on a path, obviously, towards including more and more people in our digital services, but that doesn't immediately include everybody. And I suppose I'm the sort of cabinet Luddite, so I do recognise the issues that are raised there, and I think it's very, very important that we don't leave people behind when we're on this progress towards digitalisation. So I think hopefully the replies to Councillor Rob Jones's questions can come back soon. I recognise the frustration that there are perhaps officers that aren't with us today who normally would be. As I mentioned in the seminar this morning, it's not up to me to defend the officers as such, but I think we need to be aware that a number of officers are on leave presently. Would pre-arrange that before the recent election was called, and of course, unfortunately, with this rather frustrating guidance on pre-election periods when we're not actually able to hold meetings that we normally would be able to hold. We have this shunting of meetings even into our August recess. So I'm sure there'll be, over the next couple of weeks, a number of questions that will arise when officers would normally be present to to reply to them, but we'll have to actually ask them to respond outside of the meetings until we get back to the normal meeting cycle after the August recess. It'll apply to some of us as members as well who are going to be away on leave, I'm sure. But I'd like to say that overall, I think that the digitalization strategy is taking us very much further forward in terms of changing the way in which we do our work. And I think it's a very, very progressive program. So fully taken on board the points that Rob has made, that we need to be sure that we're taking account of people that are not immediately able to access these services. I think overall the strategy is probably taking us in the right direction. I know there's been a huge amount of cross-departmental work behind it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Llewellyn. We move along now. Next up is Councillor Sonia Reynolds, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment on the point about officers, not being present. My view is, there ought to be at least one person from each relevant department able to at least take things back at this overarching meeting. We haven't got as many of these meetings as we had before. They are our only opportunity to get questions. So, there will be questions that come up that aren't pre-planned, that aren't cabinet members, are going to have to, cover a lot. But, I can't see why there can't be an officer to represent a department at least at each of these meetings. And we need to ask to make sure that cover is there, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. It is noted. I think, when we got holidays, I think if we had members from every department here, there's no indication that because some of the questions are so specialised that the person wouldn't be able to answer them themselves anyway. We do have democratic services making a note of any questions that come up that are not able to be answered at this point, and we'll get answers to them. On that note, I appreciate, I fully appreciate not everyone can make pre-briefings all the time, or even at that time know the question they want to ask. But if something comes up before the meeting, then obviously you're welcome to email any questions or observances to me, and I can raise the point for any councillor that's on the committee at all. So, that way that we can tip people off so we got the right people in the right places at the right time. Is that okay? Thank you. Are there any other questions on this one, please? Councillor Freegard, sorry, let's go first names then. Councillor Freegard. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on that point, I think it's really important that perhaps people who were involved in writing the report are here, because they could also help out the cabinet members as well. I think that's vitally important. But going back to the actual report, following on from Sean Percy's comments really about the tracking of the measurements. I mean, we've got the how, but we do need the who in there, and which committee. Agreed. Now, you were talking about the measurements need to really correspond with the action points. Now, on page 125, for instance, we're talking about the recruitment policy with neurodivergence. I can see that within the action to track that, there's nothing about us then adopting a policy which has adopted neurodivergence within it. And then obviously the measurement of that would be the numbers that we actually recruit. So I just wondered if somebody could clarify, will we be, and which committee will be actually tracking what happens to that policy? Because you've got in the action, consider neurodivergence within the policy, but not that we've adopted it. And it's great to see that we will be tracking how many managers are trained in looking for it. But so what's going to happen? What's the next point moving forward?
Thank you, Councillor Freegard. Can we bring Sheena in on this one, please?
Yes, okay. So that action sits within the strategic work.
Hang on a second, Sheena. We can't quite hear you. There's a problem with the mic.
Okay.
Oh, that's better.
You can hear me. Right. So that action it actually refers back to the strategic workforce plan. So all the employment actions will be tracked as part of the strategic workforce planning process. And what we'll be doing is doing a full review at the end of the year 2 delivery plan to look at, have we said what we said we will do? So have we done the actions? But we'll also be looking at the impact of the actions. So the same process that we undertook last year. So that's a report that went through to Cabinet and also went to Personnel Committee. What I can tell you in relation to that specific action, we have already drafted a revised recruitment and selection policy. So referring back to Councillor Patterson's point from earlier, as well as dealing with anonymised application forms, the revised policy deals with arrangements in relation to neurodivergence. So that action is already underway. You're quite right about the so what. So just doing revising the policy itself isn't the end of the story. So as well as revising the policy, we will be rolling out recruitment and selection training, which we already undertake, but we'll be amending that training to take account of the new policy arrangements once approved by Personnel Committee. And then we'll be monitoring what happens after that. So will the changes that we've made to the policy have the impact that we want them to have? If not, then we'll go back and look at it again and see what else we need to do.
Many thanks, Sheena. Councillor Freegard, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I just think we're missing an opportunity there to say, you know, we've revised the policy in the measurement, revised policy, and then it goes on. So that, because otherwise it was lost without your explanation, Sheena. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Freegard. Are there any more questions, please, on the strategic equality plan? I can't see any indication, so we'll move. The recommendation is listed on page 92 of the agenda pack. I'm happy to propose it. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henton. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain?
I can see no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this recommendation is supported.
I can see no indications to the contrary, Chair, so the recommendation is supported.
Many thanks, Alison. Moving on. Agenda item 3C, the annual governance statement for 23-24. This is listed on pages 167 to 272 of the report. Cabinet members or officers, would you like to add anything additional? Leader?
No, the report is self-explanatory and just questions, I suppose, Chair. Thank you. Nolwenn? Or
can we bring in
Simon?
Thank you. Can we bring in Louise, please?
Thanks, Chair. So the annual governance statement brought to you today has been prepared to support the Council's draft statements of accounts for 23-24 in line with the SIPFA framework on delivering good governance. So you'll see from your papers, the main body of the report covers processes, policies and strategies that we've got in place to ensure as a Council we have robust governance. The table that's on page 83, which is 257 in your pack, sets out the progress that we made during 23-24 on improvement areas that were in the 22-23 annual governance statement. And additionally then on page 87, so that's 263 in your pack, we've highlighted the improvement areas that we'll be taking forward in this financial year around governance. So happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. In pre-briefing, we didn't have actually any questions come up on this. Are any questions come up at the moment, please? I can't see any indication, so we'll move. Okay. The recommendation is listed on page 168 of the agenda pack. I'm happy to propose it. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henton. Can members please indicate if they wish to abstain?
No abstentions, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it that this recommendation is supported.
I can see no indications to the contrary, Chair, so the recommendation is supported.
Many thanks, Alison. We move to part 2 of the meeting. Agenda item 4, to consider items from the Scrutiny Committee Forward Work Programme. And there are no Scrutiny Committee Forward Working Programme items to be considered at this time. Okay. Move on to part 3. Agenda item 5, performance monitoring. We'll now move to consider the performance reports as selected by this committee for consideration. The first one up is agenda item 5A, the revenue budget monitoring outturn for 2023 to 2024, listed on pages 273 to 288 of the report. Councillor Simon Noyle, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Chair. Only to add that the report is there that everybody's had sight of. If any questions come, can you please just be detailed about the questions so that we can get the right answer to you? We've got two of our accountants here with us today as well who will be able to help if there are any detailed questions that need a response. Thank you.
Many thanks, Councillor Noyle. As you know, Hugh is away on vacation at the moment, and we have with us Ross or Jeff. Do you have anything you'd like to add, gentlemen?
No, nothing.
Lovely, thank you. We'll now move to members' questions. And the first up is Councillor Suzanne Paddison, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm presuming that the details of everything in the revenue budget has already been to a scrutiny individually, is that correct? All the details in this report, have they already been to a scrutiny, or is this the first one?
So this is the scrutiny of these papers.
Okay,
this has been to.
Sorry,
it's okay.
But I've been training on it.
We're going to have some nuances with this. So this has already been through Cabinet. Right. So this is now post-decision scrutiny on these items. Okay. I believe I'm right in saying that. Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay.
But if we just explain, if you remember, because we're changing the scrutiny model, we ended up not having a meeting arranged before the Cabinet saw it. When we sat down and discussed what our forward work programme was for the year, we did say that in this initial meeting, we would have a little problem with this, in the fact that it had gone Cabinet. So, but because it's an annual report, that we wouldn't have so much difficulty with it. But you'd raise any point you want, Councillor Paddison.
Right, thank you, Chair. It's on page 279. It's the fostering underspend of 253k. Do we have anybody who can answer something from social services? I just wanted to, it says there, the detail, it's an explanation, mainly due to the numbers of in-house foster placements being lower than the provision in the budget. I wanted to know what's happened with our foster carers. I mean, why have we come down in the number?
Councillor Noyle, please.
That doesn't fall under my portfolio in terms of the social services. The finance part of it does. Yeah. And I'm not sure whether, Jeff, you'll be able to answer that either.
Yeah, so when we set the budget, we set it for, however, the expected number of children in foster placements. This is external foster placement. During the year, the numbers have come down.
External
fostering. Right. That's why you'll see that the costs have come down as well.
Did I miss that? It says in-house foster placements.
Sorry. Yeah, it's in-house foster, but the numbers have come down. The actual number of placements that have been made, not the number of carers.
Oh, I see. I do apologise. I got confused between external and in-house. I know. So thank you. That's
lovely. Sorry.
That's moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Excellent. Good. Would you like to? Is that it? Or okay? No, lovely. Thank you. I had something else down for you. That's all. No worries. Councillor Sonia Reynolds, please.
Thank you, Chair. I did say in pre-briefing that I had I wanted more detail. I suspect there is no officer able to deal with this here. I was looking for detail on some issues around the education and lifelong leisure spending. We've received, the third paragraph on page 278 says local authority has received an administrative grant for the rollout of universal primary school meals and free school meal provision in the school holidays. This has resulted in the school meals budget underspend of 238 in this financial year. Why is there an underspend? Did we not expect the grant? We always knew we were going to get that grant. I'm a little confused about how that's come into being.
Okay.
Yeah, so we knew the budget was the grant was coming, but when we set the budget, it was not included. So that's why you'll see it's additional income from that grant. which is
Right,
offsetting
so
current costs.
despite knowing it was coming in, we didn't include it in the budget.
It was not known at the time we set the budget.
Right, okay. In the lower down on that page, we've got issues around Margam Country Park and temporary management and admin budget overspends within Celtic Leisure. Now, there's an overspend in Margam Park. We were looking at increasing the income there. I wondered, if there's any thoughts about, any more information about what's happened and what's likely to happen. And in terms of Celtic Leisure, what's caused that overspend?
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I'll bring Jeff in again, please.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I don't have the detail on that, so we'll have to come back to you if that's okay.
Thank
No
you.
problem.
Again, my concern about questions being answered in that way is that we all get them, but also that those answers are made public on the website as well, because this is a public meeting. And then there's several items throughout this. One I can pick up under social services and housing of overspend due to unachieved vacancy management savings. I am concerned that we use that as a mechanism in the budget, and yet we aren't achieving that. What's if we've got the staff need, we shouldn't be budgeting for it. So what's the real story there?
Bring Jeff back in again then, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So each directorate has been given a 5% vacancy management target. Now, they're not going to achieve it across the board, but some areas will overachieve, some areas will underachieve. But across the council, we have achieved that 5% vacancy target for 2023-24.
So it's across the council that's been achieved.
It has, yes.
I could ask in future papers on this for more explanation in the information here, rather than just an issue. Thank you.
Okay, duly noted, Councillor Reynolds. Okay. Democratic Services are making a note of it now. Thank you. Are there any other questions, Councillor Reynolds?
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. Next up I have is Councillor Sean Percy.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got two questions on the report. The first one is in relation to the social services section of the Upturn report and the overspend of 209,000 as a result of the system that was to be funded from reserves. It's more of a semantics question, really, just trying to understand. Obviously, the decision was made not to fund it from reserves, but to pay for it anyway, and it's gone in as an overspend, which ultimately, if you look at the budget, has probably come out of a reserve pot after all of the other under and overspends. So I'm just trying to understand sort of the decision making around that, because I'm not fully switched on to how these things work. But that just caught my attention. And then the second question is in relation to the council tax collection rate, and this is something we've seen a fair bit of over the years. And in this report, we've secured significantly more income than we budgeted for because our collection rate was higher. And obviously, it's a little bit concerning that we didn't accurately forecast that. And I was just wondering if there's any action going to be taken to make sure that the budget setting is accurate in terms of the council tax income forecast, because I recall hearing quite a bit over the years of being a councillor, or we put in 97%, but we've secured 98, or we've put in 98 and we've got 98.5. So I'd just be curious as to whether that situation is being looked at. Diolch.
Diolch. Thank you, Councillor Percy. We'll hand over to Jeff again, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. In regards to the IT system, the information in the report, it is a presentation issue. So social services hold a sufficient reserve to pay for the new IT system, Mosaic. However, the 23-24 costs were funded using available budget from underspends in other areas rather than drawing down the IT reserve. Technically, what should have happened, we should have drawn down the money from reserve for the Mosaic costs, and then the underspend would have gone back into reserve. So overall, there's no impact on the budget, but yeah, it's a presentation issue.
Many thanks, Jeff. And on the second issue of the council tax, please.
Yeah, so completely agree. We will look at the collection rate when we set the council tax base in November. There's a couple of things to note. Obviously, there's a fair amount of uncertainty around employment at the moment for next year. And next year, we'll see the premiums on long-term empty properties, second homes are introduced. This also might have an impact on the collection rate.
Yeah, very clear. Thanks, Jeff. Are you okay with that, Councillor Percy? Would you like to come back in?
If I could perhaps come back in briefly on the social services side of things. And again, it is probably just the way the report's written, but it refers to sort of, subsections of the budget, but we don't have a table to reference. We've kind of got an overall table in the appendix, but I don't think it has the same breakdowns that are being referenced in the text. So it might be helpful if those sort of tallied up, because perhaps I would have been able to see what you've just explained, but obviously as you read it, it's not really clear how that works. But I appreciate the comments on council tax and that there's going to be a lot more uncertainty on many factors next year. But it is important, isn't it, that we can get that forecast as accurate as possible for our budgeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. We have duly noted your observance on the table, okay, and Jeff has given me the nod that we will look at that in future, okay. Thank you.
Chair, can I just come in on?
Yeah, Councillor Doyle. Yeah,
thank you. Can I just come in on the council tax issue as well and the collections? So what we've looked at with budgets is our figures, as you have said, Sean. And in all fairness to Anne Hinder and her team, she has performed well. She has overperformed over, I think, every year that I've been a councillor, which is obviously to her credit. And I think it's put us top of the collection rates in Wales in terms of council tax, which is to be applauded for that. And I asked a similar question to yourself in terms of budgeting and forecasting in the real world, as I call it. What I do something similar. And I asked the question why we went from a Q3 to an end year result of a large chunk coming back as a positive, if you like. So I asked the question, and who said that only came to fruition in February and March of this year, which then had the impact on the overall result. So we weren't able to forecast what we were going to achieve any earlier than we did get it, if that makes any sense. But obviously we'll be reviewing the 98% when we go through budget setting for this next coming year, if that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. I think that's pretty clear, Councillor Percy. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Next up, I have Councillor Alan Llewellyn. Councillor Alan Llewellyn, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. And thanks everyone for all the questions and everything. I think they're all legitimate. I'd like to make one sort of comment about the process. I mean, obviously, this isn't the Cabinet's process. I mean, the reverse, really. It arises out of the recommendations of the chairs and vice chairs of scrutiny, which the whole council adopted. But I think as we're introducing this new system, I think there are things to learn as we go along, because the point has been made about the availability of officers. I'm sure that Noelwyn and colleagues will feed that back to officer colleagues. The Cabinet also picked up that possibly there isn't enough time between the scrutiny briefings, where you consider the questions you want to ask, and the actual scrutiny meetings, because I think it's important that as far as possible, for us to all make this work, that we should have the questions presented in good time before the scrutiny meetings, so that we don't have the situations where the answers aren't available. Obviously, there'll be supplementaries and so on. So I think the two things rising out of this afternoon's meeting that we have to look at is the timing briefings to prepare the questions, but also trying to ensure that the questions are provided in advance. And then, sorry, the third point obviously is the availability, ensuring availability of the relevant officers to answer the questions where they are technical questions that can't be covered immediately by the cabinet members. It's just an observation really, than more than anything else, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Llewellyn. It's duly noted. We'll move back though to the revenue budget report, okay? And we'll ask it if there's any other questions on that, please. I can see no further questions. This report is for noting, so we'll move on now then, please. Agenda item 5B, this is the capital budget monitoring outturn for 23-24 on pages 289 to 303 of the report. Councillor Noyle or officers, would you like to add anything additional?
Thank you, Chair. I don't. The information is there for everybody to read, and if there are any questions, we'll take them as they come through, please.
Ross, yep, happy? Okay, we'll move along then. I've got one indication initially from a member. Councillor Sean Percy, please.
Dear David, thank you. Just before I get to my question, glad to see in this that work's progressing now on the Pontedau Arts Centres. It's one that I picked up in this report many times. My question's only a brief one in relation to Levelling Up Fund. I note there's no reference to the Port Talbot and the transport project in the report. So just confirmation, has there been no spend within that financial year on those projects, or was it so inconsequential that it's wrapped up in something else? Because I'm aware they're in a bit more of an embryonic stage because the funding came in later. So it's just the third round of Levelling Up funding projects as to whether there was any spend in that year. Diolch.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Can I bring Simon in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's been a limited spend on, certainly on the project for Talbot in terms of the theatre, etc. We are at design stage on that and progressing well. On the bridge, I think they're still awaiting the offer letter. I think there's been a little bit of an issue, and obviously the snap election caused a bit of delay, and that's why we've had a delay from central government in terms of receiving confirmation on certain items.
Many thanks, Simon. Councillor Percy, would you like to come back? Are you happy?
Happy with that. That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Percy. Next up, I have Councillor Rob Jones, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A couple of observations and one or two questions, if you don't mind. When I looked at the appendix for the capital budget on page 297, this was picked up when the revenue budget was scrutinised. The lack of detail included on budget lines, and in particular, there are things here that I don't really understand how they are falling into a capital budget. It goes against what the narrative says on our council's website when it tries to explain the capital programme. I'm not going to go into the full detail, but it talks about capital investment leads to improved facilities. And it then talks about where the money's gone, which is maintenance of buildings, highways, neighbourhood, improvements, funding for roads and disability facilities grant. Yet when I look at this page, the third line down here, there's universal primary free school meals. Now, to me, that's not capital. We haven't built a building to provide primary free school meals. So I'm at a loss as to understand why that's in the capital programme. Likewise, supporting learners with additional needs. The others, sustainable schools, IT for schools, Margam Park stonework, they are capital projects. But then in the middle of that is leisure investment. There is no explanation of that. And one way to reduce questions would be to have more of an explanatory comment in relation to what these investments are. Leisure investments could be anything. And we don't really know what these are. And then to put other education and leisure as a separate item on the second page, which is 298, And these are substantial amounts. You know, these are over £1 million projects. And as I say, the rest is self-explanatory. But these are coming up, and to me, are showing red flags because they're not capital projects. So either we've got to change our definition on the website in relation to this, or we need a clearer comment in relation to where and how this money is being spent that is classified as a capital project. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. We'll bring Ross in on this one, please.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. In relation to the Universal Primary Free School Meals and the second one you mentioned, these are grants that come in from Welsh Government that are capital related. So in relation to the free school meals one, it tends to be to fund things like kitchen extensions, etc., as opposed to the actual meals that we provided for the children. It's the infrastructure that goes behind it. So it's those kinds of things. And with the leisure investment and the other line, totally understand where you're coming from. Now I'm seeing that myself. We'll definitely need to review this, note that going forward, and either put more detail in relation to it. The only thing with some of these, there could be many lines of those. However, I totally agree in relation to the other. £1 million, is a big number in there. We will definitely need to be breaking that down even further, if that's okay.
Many thanks, Ross. Yeah, I think I agree with Councillor Jones that we need more detail on these, don't we? One line, it just isn't enough for the amounts that are there. Would you like to come back in, Councillor Jones?
Yeah, and I'm grateful to Ross for his explanation, and I think that would have circumvented my questions and would have been irrelevant if that detail was there. Because if they could, building a new bridge, Sean made reference to Pontardawe Simba, they are self-explanatory. But we can't accept and will question as a scrutiny, which is right and proper to do, the one-liner which tells us 3/4 or 4/5 of nothing. And I do think then taking it another stage further, as I say, on another screen, I've got the council's website and democracy and elections, budgeting and spending. There is a whole page there about the capital programme, where it comes from and what the money is spent on. And that is not equating to what we've just had an explanation of. So not only do we need to look at explanations in relation to the performance, and this is a done deal, it's already happened, it's 23-24, but it does need clarity. But we need to look at our website as well, because it's not giving clear, concise information for those that are interested in this type of thing. But Ross, thanks for the answer, and I think we do need those included in that report, even though it's historic, for clarity for ourselves, clarity for members of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Yeah, some good points there, fair play, and these are duly noted. Thank you. Are there any other members' questions, please? Councillor Anthony Richards, please.
Yeah, diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. My question is just given the substantial sort of underspend of the 6.156.
Sorry, we seem to have lost you, Anthony. Councillor Richards? We'll give a minute to go, see if we can get him back in. Just rejoined, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Richards. We lost you for a few minutes then, yeah, in the cyberspace. So
digitally excluded he was. Digitally excluded.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so apologies for that. My question was, just given the substantial underspend of the 6.156 million in the capital programme for 23-24 and the significant delays in key projects such as the Crumbling Primary Demountable, the hydrogen stimulus, etc. What specific lessons have been learned regarding the project planning and execution, and how will these lessons be applied to ensure more accurate budgeting, improved project timelines, and effective utilisation of funds in future capital programmes? Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Councillor Richards. So bring Simon in, please.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I think with a lot of the projects that we run, we know from the outset that they're pretty difficult and tricky projects. Sometimes it's a lot easier to get spend out than it is with others. And with a number of those projects that you mentioned, there are third parties involved, like the hydrogen stimulus, for example. And so we rely on them to get the spend out as well as us. So I think, we've got a pretty good methodology around our program management for the capital projects. But we often have either issues in delays in contracts or the delays in grants coming through or supplementary grants to make up the whole spend. And so sometimes it's not as easy as it might seem initially.
Lovely. Thanks, Simon. Is that okay, Councillor Richards? We just seem to be carrying money over until full funding becomes available, I think. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions on the capital budget, please? I can't see any indication, so we'll move. This report is for noting, so it's duly noted, okay? Moving along to agenda item 5C. This is the Treasury Management outturn for 23-24 on pages 305 to 321 of the report. Councillor Noyle, all the officers, would you like to add anything, please?
No, similar to the last one, the report is there. Are there any questions?
We're happy to move on. I didn't have any indications in pre-briefing about questions on this. Are there any questions on this, please? Councillor Paddison.
Sorry, Chair. It's one I've thought of since the pre-brief. I've requested training on budgetary matters. And one of this, a general question really is, when interest rates, such as the Bank of England rate, change, or it is anticipated that they will change, do we follow a formula as to where we put our money or whether we borrow more or whatever, or is it down to a cabinet decision?
Councillor Noyle.
I don't think it's a cabinet decision. I think that's a day-to-day officer job. So Ross.
Over to Ross then, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, exactly that. It'll be we've got Treasury advisors that we listen to, so they are the experts, let's say. So they will monitor interest rates, not just as they stand now. They'll project these interest rates into the future. So, for example, if they are telling us interest rates are going to go up, we consider borrowing earlier when interest rates are lower, and vice versa. If they think interest rates are going to go up, we may invest. We'll wait to invest until later on in a couple of years and things like that to maximise either a return or to minimise our borrowing repayments. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
is it always as a result of external people giving you advice? It's nothing to do with people in the council.
Not really. We can make that decision ourselves as well, but we as I said, we do meet with them on a regular basis. They've got to provide us with as much information as they can, and from that information, we will make the decision as opposed to them. So we will see if things it may be more beneficial. In hindsight, now interest rates have rocketed. If we'd thought about this a few years ago, we could have looked to borrow a bit more and with the lower interest rates and lower borrowing repayments and things like that. So it's a bit of a mixture of the two, if that kind of makes sense.
Thank you, Chair. I was just trying to get
many thanks, both. Councillor, no?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just add as well? I think that particular item, one of many within the council, falls under delegated authority. So those are things that the officers will crack on with rather than bring it back to cabinet. So the first we will see of those is when we get the monitoring reports through on a quarterly basis. So we don't make a decision on whether we'll apply for any more funding or not, as the case may be, in terms of where interest rates go up and down. That is something the officers will carry out as their duties.
Thank you, Councillor Noyle. Yeah, it's quite interesting, though, to ask the question, I think. On a sideline, I'm the Neath Talbot representative on the Pensions Fund Committee with Swansea Council, and knowing what Ross just said there, you have to rely on outside people. It's the type of money you're talking about, and the changes are mental. It's been a steep learning curve in the last year and a half for me.
In no way was I questioning it. I just wanted to understand it and what was the.
No, I think it's fair play. It's nice to know, really, and a bit of background towards it. So thank you all. Yeah. Are there any other questions on this report, please? I can't see any indication, so we'll move progress. The report is actually just for noting, okay? Agenda item 5D, to resolve to exercise the power set out in section 35 of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015 before the designated overview and scrutiny committee for this purpose approved by council in May of 2015. Yep. I'm happy to propose it. Can I have a seconder, please?
Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henton. Are there any abstentions?
I can see no abstentions, Chair.
Thank you. Members, if you do not enter the contrary, I will take it that this item is approved.
Just to confirm, members, there are no papers attached to this. You just need to resolve to exercise the powers to be able to scrutinise the PSB annual report. So this is just a standing item that you need to approve to be able to scrutinise.
Yeah, it was asked in pre-briefing why it jumped from C to E, and I thought we dropped the letter D from the alphabet, but no, it's because it's a standing item, okay? And are there any abstentions? Members, if you do not enter the contrary, I will take it that this item is approved.
I can see no indications contrary, Chair. The item is approved.
Lovely, thanks, Alison. Moving along, agenda item 5E, the Neath Talbot Public Services Board Wellbeing Plan Annual Report for 2023 to 2024, pages 323 to 352. Officers would like to add anything additional to the report, Noelwyn?
No, nothing to add, Chair. Diolch.
Thank you, Noelwyn. Checking on it. Members' questions. I didn't have any indication on this one. Councillor Freegard.
Chair, yeah, just requesting some reassurance on this. Given that we're following a new model here now with scrutiny, I can see that Celtic Leisure's due to be discussed on the 12th of September by the relevant committee. I just want to make sure that whatever happens in that committee, then it will still go to Cabinet. Because I understand from the new model, we have to request things on the agenda. So will that, following whatever committee has gone through first, then go for recommendations to Cabinet?
Don't think this one falls under me, but I'm not sure.
Public Service Board is under myself, but
I just don't want it missed, going to one committee and then not coming back to members.
I think,
but if it doesn't go pre, it'll go post decision scrutiny, won't it? Some of these items on finance were post decision.
Yeah, it's just
so
that we were
post
told we had
cabinet
to request certain items.
I guess you need to request that item goes on the list with Democratic Services. Is that right?
Program, isn't it?
It's on the
Noelwyn,
forward.
hold on a second, please. Can I bring Noelwyn in now, please?
So just to gain some clarity, I guess, in terms of the Public Service Board and the report you got before you this afternoon is its wellbeing plan, which has the same 4 wellbeing objectives as we do as a local authority. So that's the report that's before you today. Celtic Leisure are not part of the Public Service Board. So the Public Service Board is made up of some statutory partners such as Mid West Wales Fire, South Wales Police, the Health Board, etc. So I'm not sure if that question is related to this wellbeing plan and this particular committee, Councillor.
Right.
Thank you, Noelwyn.
Sorry, it's just that with the new model, when we were in social services, we were told we had to request certain items. It's not a given that they're then going to be on the agenda. So if it goes to the PSB, obviously, whatever results from that is going to go to committee. Yeah. So I just want reassurance that it
just
will...
a bit of clearing up as well. Sorry, sorry, Chair, just interrupting you. I mean, that is a Public Service Board that I chair, partners, outside bodies. The part that you were referring to is internal. It's not necessarily sitting in the Public Service Board with the partners. That's what we deliver. Obviously, the Public Service Board is for Neath Talbot. But if you're referring to Celtic Leisure as an item, that will fall under a scrutiny in the scrutiny process. And so if it is asking for items to be recommended, it'd be at that appropriate scrutiny committee to... it's on there, is it? Yeah. Well, there we are. It's on the forward work programme. Simon, you pulled it up. Go on.
Well, it's on 2nd of October, I've got it as.
Excuse me, can I come in a second? Have we jumped to part 4 on Cabinet Forward Working Programme? Because we currently discussing the Neath Talbot Public Services Board.
Yeah, and it's on page 356.
Yeah, but the Public Services Board only goes to 352.
Sorry, I got it down as 35. Maybe.
The annual report.
We're in the wrong report. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair.
Thanks, no problem. Can I just point out as well, it's been pointed out to me by Democratic Services that actually D was on there. It has actually listed in the agenda, even though it wasn't initially brought up because obviously it went through, but it is listed on
just
the agenda page.
Chair,
Alison?
Chair, just to confirm, 5D is on the front cover of the agenda, so it is actually listed as an item on the agenda. On the front cover agenda, I'll go through it after the meeting, Councillor Patterson, that's fine.
I can see it's listed in front of me now. Yeah, thank you. Right then, Public Services Board. Are there any more questions on the Public Services Board report, please? Or any questions? Okay, thank you. There are no more questions then. This report is just for noting. Thank you very much. And so we move to part 4 of the meeting. Agenda item 6, selection of items for future scrutiny. This is on pages 353 to 374. To go through the forward work programme and add any further items which members may wish to consider. Alison is about to give us an update that have been added, please.
So just to confirm, members, since we held the forward work programme session and this meeting, there's been no further reports added to the Cabinet forward work programme, which will be relevant to fall under this committee. With regards to the one outstanding item, I know I briefly raised it in pre-briefing. With regards to transportation, we've had a request that be added to the forward work programme to come back for consideration at the next meeting of this committee, and that will then we would be given the advice from Craig Griffiths, our head of legal, with regards to how we move this item moving forward, whether it falls into this committee or whether we do joint work in moving forward. But we will pop that on the forward work programme for next time. But other than that, Chair, I don't have any updates.
Lovely, thank you, Alison. During pre-briefing, we had a couple of indications from members that they wish to ask a question on this. And the first up is Councillor Suzanne Patterson, please. Okay, thank you. Councillor Sonia Reynolds, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just extremely pleased to see that it has been added to the agenda for next meeting, that we'll have an update as to how it can be handled. It is, as has been emphasised a few times in this meeting, it's a new model, so we're finding our way as to how we deal with things and how things go forward. In terms of the last discussion as well, I had my hand up, but obviously wasn't noted. I was looking to just make the point that Celtic Leisure has been requested for the Celtic Leisure Board to come to the education scrutiny meeting so that a full discussion on that topic can be held. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. That's duly noted. Okay. Are there any other questions? Councillor Suzanne Patterson.
Not on the report, Chair, but just to clarify for me, is this the only chance to put things on the forward work programme until the next scrutiny meeting?
Bring in
Or
Alison.
if you have something that in your mind, is there a cut-off point where you can just add it on to the list?
We would prefer if you raise it in the meeting so the whole member is aware, but if you wish to email me outside of the meeting, I can take it up with the chair then outside of the meeting for possible consideration at the next meeting.
Okay, and are there specific dates before the next meeting that it's too late for?
We would usually require about 7 days.
7 days, okay, thank you very much.
Lovely. Thanks for clarifying that, Alison. Good point, Councillor Patterson. Are there any further questions, please? No? We'll move along then to agenda item 7. Any urgent items? And you'll be delighted to hear that, again, there are no urgent items at this point. Many thanks to you all for joining us, and the officers and the Cabinet for their responses to any questions that have been raised. I'm so sorry that we couldn't answer all the questions under this new model. I think it does indicate how important pre-briefing is now compared to what it perhaps was before. We do have now, what I'm glad to see is that pre-briefing actually is occurring a few days before the actual meeting now, so at least we do have a chance to bring things in before we get to the meeting. But I think it's incumbent upon us all, really, to try and get our questions in as early as we can, so the answers that we're after are prepared by the time we come to the meeting. I agree that something might come up at the last minute, but I think we're finding that pre-briefing isn't working as far as this meeting is concerned, as far as I can see, because we got questions coming in that didn't appear in pre-briefing, and that's the whole idea of pre-briefing, really. Yeah. Otherwise, there's no point in having pre-briefing. No, thank you. I think that's. I'm going to call it a close, Suzanne. Thank you. Hey, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again shortly. Thank you.